Okay. I've attempted to record this video 5 times. The last 2 don't count because they were over 2 years ago. When I tried, then I broke the book. But anyway, most recently I filmed last Sunday, but I need to re-record now because I went through the whole editing process before I noticed that I had food in my teeth. And I don't think I have food in my teeth this time. I don't have food in my teeth this time. So we're just gonna forge on ahead. Infinite Jest is a 1,200-page book about a tennis academy, a halfway house, Canadian terrorists, and a film that makes anyone who watches it never ever stop. It was an intense read, and I'd like to tell you why. Hi, I'm Nitwit, welcome to Shitlit. It took me 2 years cumulatively to finish Infinite Jest. Sometimes, however, it can take a month. The person I know who read it in a month had a framed picture of David Foster Wallace on their dresser, so maybe don't go for a month unless you're planning on leaning in with the full obsession. And here we get to a problem I have with Infinite Jest. The people I know who have read it recommend it, and this is true in online discourse as well. Not all. They're mainly interested in reveling in the author's sad boy brilliance, which isn't quite the tone conversations surrounding the author should maybe take, because he was a human and problematic in many ways. Which isn't to say he's a human, we excuse this. It's to say if he were alive to be Me Too'd, he would have been Me Too'd. And the reason he wasn't Me Too'd is because the person who would have done the Me Too'ing had already talked openly about her experience being in a relationship with the author. And this is not to air relationship laundry out, but just generally there's some pretty colorful stuff that's been said by the author. But let's talk about the stuff in the book. Infinite Jest was written by David Foster Wallace, a guy from the Midwest with academic-leaning parents. He was raised comfortably, but he was a lonely kid, arguably a lonelier adult, and this loneliness typifies his writing. His characters are often introverted, and his narration is often angled inward as his characters navigate the world. Infinite Jest follows several such characters. Hal in Cadenza is an aspiring and somewhat jaded junior tennis player. Hal's brother, Oren, is a professional football player who enjoys sleeping with other people's wives. Hal and Oren's father, James in Cadenza, was a physicist and filmmaker. He's dead when the story takes place, but his presence is felt throughout the story because he is the one who made the fatal entertainment, Infinite Jest. And this is the movie that anyone who watches never stops watching until they die. Don Gately is a former drug addict and staff member at Ennet House. Joelle Van Dyne is a veiled radio host and resident at Ennet House. Remy Marath is a Quebecois terrorist from a group that I'm not gonna try to say.
Assassin en fauteuil roulant.
And Hugh Steepley is a government worker for the Office of Unspecified Services who attempts to stop the circulation of the fatal entertainment, aka the movie Infinite Jest, which is why the book is called Infinite Jest. I could go on because I'm still missing key people, but for what we're going to cover, that's most of what's relevant, and then some. Infinite Jest is a network of entangled events with particular nodes where larger things happen. Larger nodes may be places like Enfield Tennis Academy or Ennet House, or they may be a straight-up place in time, like a conversation that happens between Steepley and Marath on a cliffside. The story surrounding these larger nodes includes all sorts of tidbits They range from sort of day-to-day, not boring, but ordinary things to more tragic events. Throughout the story, we see Hal, the tennis player, as he and his friends navigate adolescence, junior professional athletics, and their looming obsolescence in the sport they dedicate most of their waking hours to. Steepley and Marath, the government agent and Quebecois terrorist, respectively, as they work adjacently to stop the circulation of this fatal movie called Infinite Jest. Marath is a triple or quadruple agent, I think. I don't know. We don't really know whose side he's on. He's mostly just in it for taking care of his sick wife, which is, caring for a loved one. That's a relatable motive. We get to know Don Gately and House staff until one of the climactic instances in the book. Gately is shot and refuses pain meds to avoid relapsing. Joelle, on the other hand, doesn't exactly have a story as much as she's present or a presence throughout the book. Like, yes, we get a lot of background and information on how and why she is the way she is, but everything she does is either set in the past or dealt with indirectly. I could continue, but honestly, if you want to understand the plot of Infinite Jest, like exactly how things fit together, you're gonna just have to read it yourself. That doesn't necessarily mean I recommend reading it yourself. Doesn't mean I don't either. A complex book warrants complex feelings. Did I personally feel steamrolled by this 90-ton tumbleweed of a narrative? Yes. Did I enjoy it? Maybe 60% of the time, and that 60 was a good 60. I would be totally hypnotized, enthralled, just in the story until I got to a section in the other 40%. We'll get there. But first, let's talk about... Infinite Jest was one of the most hyped books of 1996, and it garnered many positive reviews in the first few weeks and months it was available. One thing that was funny about these reviews was they came kind of quickly. It's possible these reviewers were speed readers like my one friend, but even the author himself suspected some of reviewing the book before they'd actually read the book.
Every writer dreams of having a lot of attention.
You bet.
But the fact of the matter is this is a long, difficult book, and a lot of the attention began coming at a time when, I can do elementary arithmetic. A lot of people hadn't had time to read the book yet.
Since then, however, the book has been read in full by many people who are enamored by its twists and turns of phrase. And I think that's fair, on a level. The book is certainly a lot, but is it worth the hype? Let's take a look at some, and then I'll get to my rec. We see traditional and non-traditional addictions throughout Infinite Jest. The residents of Ennet House represent the former, more traditional addictions to literal substances. However, the more pervasive addictions in Infinite Jest don't surround things that we typically think of as being addictive in the clinical sense. The popularity of a system of video cartridge circulation represents an addiction to entertainment across the ONAN, which is the Organization of North American Nations, and includes the US, Canada, and Mexico. And we can't not mention the literally addictive film Infinite Jest. Finally, the students of Enfield Tennis Academy represent an addiction to striving for success. Notably, both traditional and non-traditional addictions impede the addicts' lives in similar but not identical ways. I personally think the similarities... Shut the f*** up! I personally think the similarities are more interesting to talk about here. The world of Infinite Jest is one of rampant consumerism. Time has been subsidized such that each year is named for a particular brand. Most of the story takes place in the year of the Depend adult undergarment. The president of the US is a severe germaphobe and general dickhead obsessed with keeping clean. There's this great bit where he's attending a football game of Orrin Incandenzas in a bubble, where he's going to watch him punt. That's what Orrin does, he punts the football. And there's a section where David Foster Wallace forecasts face filtering technology, like the face filtering technology we kind of have already, back in 1996. But this face filtering technology is sort of adopted and then cast aside because people decide that it's easier just to talk on the phone and forego all the bells and whistles of like a full face filter. Interesting. Joelle Van Dyne, or the prettiest girl of all time, as she's known by her ex-boyfriend Oren, has developed a sense of learned helplessness in response to her circumstances. She has this elaborate backstory that we're not sure is, or we know that some part of it is true, we don't know how true it is. This is Miss Adelaide. She's very sweet. So Joelle's mother allegedly threw acid on her face, which was an accident. She was trying to hit Joelle's dad, who just admitted to being romantically in love with his daughter. The book has a lot of that kind of edginess, if you get me. And as a result, Joelle wears a veil. Finally, it's worth mentioning, though we don't see outside of the Enid House ETA bubble all that much, the ONAN is pretty helpless. An entire section of the Northeast has just been reduced to a trash dump, like a toxic trash wasteland. And that's to accommodate the massive amount of trash that we just have to do something with. I don't know if that was 10 minutes, but here comes a wreck. There's a lot of talk in this book that's incredibly relevant. It's a great springboard for conversations I think people should be having. Has consumerism become an addiction? If it is an addiction, how do we break it? Do we even want to break it? But there's also quite a bit of language that got me riled up. I stopped reading Infinite Jest around page 250. I picked it up again a year and a half later, and I finished it. I stopped because I was irked by the dissonance between these beautiful, heartfelt, sentimental sections and sort of the briefer, more flippant use of insensitive or just fully bigoted language elsewhere that there was really no reason to use in the context of the story. Should you read Infinite Jest? I don't know. I'd say if you're this, then the book was written for you and you're the most likely person to enjoy it. If you're anyone else, the book may make you mad or sad, and for reasons not pertaining to the plot, which will make you sad enough on its own. If you still want to read something by David Foster Wallace, I'd recommend going for one of his short stories or essays, and I'll recommend a few in the credits. I hope you got the information you were looking for. This is Shitlit, I'm Nitwit, and I'll see you next time.